It is Wednesday within the Octave of EASTER, April the 7th of the year of the Lord 2021. And the Gospel is taken from St. Luke, chapter 24, verse 13 to 35. That very day, the first day of the week, two of Jesus' disciples were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus, and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them, but their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place there in these days?" He replied to them, "What sort of things?" They said to him, "The things that happened to Jesus of the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, how our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the third day since this took place. Some women from our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those with us went to the tomb and found things just as the women had described, but him they did not see." And he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them what referred to him in all the scriptures. As they approached the village in which they were going, he gave the impression that he was going on farther. But they urged him, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. And it happened that while he was with them at table, he took bread, said a blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that, their eyes were opened and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scriptures to us?" So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11 and those with them who were saying, "The Lord had truly been raised, and he has appeared to Simon." Then the two recounted what had happened, what had taken place on the way, and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The Gospel of the Lord. This is maybe the most famous, the most popular story of the apparition of Jesus Christ, the disciples of Emmaus. It's a very interesting story. Maybe the setting is this. Luke wrote his gospel around the year 85. The community was in distress. They were downcast, the Christian community. They were expecting Jesus to come back, the second coming, and he was not coming back. Then Jerusalem was destroyed. Then the Christians began to be persecuted. Was it worth it to be Christian? When you were persecuted, there was a sense of hopelessness. People leaving the community. So the two disciples could be a symbol, a sign of what was happening in the community. People leaving Jerusalem, the mother church behind. The community lives, remains behind because they have no hope, no faith. And this is a moment that Jesus approaches them. He takes them where they are, and he begins to ask about what happened. And then they begin to to tell him what had happened, all the stories. No? Jesus accompanies us in the moments of trouble, distress with this COVID-19. He walks with us and asks, what is wrong with you? Tell him. Tell him what happened, what is happening to you. Then Jesus begins to open up for them the scriptures that he had to suffer. It's a community. The community has to follow Jesus, to take up the cross, to endure under the duress and the persecution. It is there. And explains the scriptures to them. And finally, they recognize him at the breaking of the bread. So somehow behind today's gospel is the Eucharist. What do we do in the Eucharist? The first part, we listen to the Word of God, all the marvelous things the Lord has done for us. Then the second part is the liturgy of the Eucharist, when we break the bread, when we get memory of Jesus Christ. When we listen to the scriptures, our hearts burn with love. Just listen to God. Just by reading, by listening to this gospel, my heart was burning with fire. And then we go to the second part, no? Breaking of the bread, when we recognize Jesus in a piece of bread because he wanted to stay with us, to remain with us. And in that moment, the two disciples cannot stay in Emmaus. They had to go back quickly, even though it was evening, to tell the disciples, yes, we have seen the Lord. That is the experience to be with him, the experience of the risen Christ. Have a blessed Wednesday of Easter.